Live colour advice session this evening. It's fantastic to have you joining us. My name's Fiona, I'm a Taubmans colour specialist, and we are here this evening to help you with all of your colour conundrums. We're certainly here to offer you colour advice. If you're embarking on a project and would certainly like some advice or suggestions around a project, please ask away. And we are also here to talk about our wonderful portfolio of products that we have available to protect and beautify your space. So if you were joining us for the very first time, I welcome you and I thank you for joining us. And I'll quickly run through how our session works. So for the next half an hour, I will be streaming, so I'll be on screen helping you with all of your colour queries, etc. And we always run a little bit of a mini sort of masterclass if you like. And it's an opportunity for you to upload any questions into the feed that you have around colour. And we'll do our best to answer them for you. If you do have images that you would like us to have a look at, if you can hold off uploading those until we finish streaming, and then I'll be able to have a look at them for you and offer some suggestions. I do believe that when we are live, it's very hard for you to upload any images. So again, thank you for joining us. Tonight, we're talking all about exterior, but don't let that stop you. If you've got any queries on something to do with, interior colour, etc., please ask away. So look, I know I've been out and about in the field this week, and starting an interior project can be quite daunting. And it's sort of a bit like, where do we begin? And I know that I have had quite a few encounters with customers in store, and a lot of renovation is still happening, a lot of paint projects, and there certainly are new builds taking place. So it's sort of like, where do you begin? How do you start the process? So I've put together a little bit of a class tonight, if you like, just to take you through some steps, some tips and tricks to help you along the way. So, whether you are renovating or doing a new build, there's a lot of things to consider. So I'm going to share my screen. I will just open up my iPad and get that firing before I share my screen. Okay, so I'll pop myself in the corner and hopefully that works. Fantastic. So I will take you on a little bit of a journey. So as you can see here, here's a basic mood board. So look, there are many versions of mood boards, vision boards, whatever you choose to call them. So we are starting here. So how do you get from this to that? So that's quite a common question. I'm about to start, I've got all these ideas in my head, I've kind of got an idea of what I would like regarding colour, etc., but I really don't know where to begin. So we're going to take you on a journey, as I said. So here we go. Here's a mood board, just a rough one that I've put together today. So, and what I suggest is there are many apps that you can use to create your own mood boards. There are certainly a way that I like to do it is to get yourself some blue tack, all of the images that you like, print up. If you're out taking photos and you're looking at things, take photos, print them up and put them onto a board or even the back of a door using some blue tack. And it gives you an opportunity to be able to subtract and add and vice versa and continue that until you all come to a common ground where everybody is liking what's sort of put in that one place. And then you start to see a common theme occurring as well, especially if you're out looking and you are continually putting images of, let's say, light coloured houses, light colour roofs, etc. You can start to see that that's what you're gravitating towards. Obviously on this as well, if there's any colour chips, you're out and about in your hardware store, pin them to the board as well so that you're starting to create a visual, if you like. And the beauty of it is having it all there, you can subtract, your partner can subtract, your kids can take things off, etc., until you reach a point where everybody's happy. So as I said, there are lots of apps available. You can certainly do things on Pinterest, Canva apps, but realistically, the best advice that I can give you is to print everything up and have a tangible board where you can start to add and subtract. Okay, what else do I need to tell you? And one thing, a really important tip, you've got to have somewhere to start when you are about to embark on a renovation, an exterior paint project, etc. And it's going and finding something that resonates with you. And so I'll reference the roof again. Go out and see whether you like a light or a dark roof color, and that gives you a starting point. Once you can sort of go, okay, you know, I really like a light colored roof, and then you can start to look at the colors that would be suitable for your roof. It gives you a starting point, and from that you can start to build your color palette. Okay, so the next thing that I would recommend is writing down what areas are going to need painting, or what areas are going to stay the color they are, so that you can start to see a visual and you can start to understand what's going to take place. Because I think it's really important understanding what stays, what goes, and that again will help you to build your color palette around. Okay, I've got notes here to make sure that I haven't forgotten anything. And you know, it's really important, like you've got a lot more scope if you are changing all of the colors that are existing, or if you're building, you've got a lot more scope, etc. But you know, if you do have a house that you're renovating and, for example, you're stuck with the roof color, you're not going to change that, well then that is going to help dictate what colors you're going to use for the exterior of your home. So once you've sort of diarised or written everything down, the next thing is to start working out or grouping the colours, because it's really important. Like when you want to, for me, it's all about achieving, you know, that beautiful, aesthetically pleasing look. So, and colour is a very powerful tool that can be used to create the most amazing looking spaces, but you still got to be careful with how you use the colour. And, you know, we've talked previously about elements of design and principles of design, etc. And we've talked about repetition being one of them. And repetition is really important when you are using colour. And it's to make sure that if you're using, for example, if I'm doing a dark roof, I'm going to want to use repetition and bring the colour from the roof somewhere else within that exterior colour design. So you don't just want to have one colour sitting there by itself. You sort of want to have, you know, one colour being used a couple of times and then another colour being used again and again, so that you're building that beautiful cohesive colour scheme. And as I started off, it's going to be very, very pleasing to the eye. It's really important. Okay, so the next thing, so you've started to work on all of this. What else have I got here so I don't forget? Oh, and the other thing too, like I'll quickly skip. When you are working with exterior colours or even interior colours, using the 60-30-10, so 60% of one colour, 30% of another colour, and then 10% of another colour. And you know, you can actually add an additional colour if you like, but it's how you use the colour and it's how you place the colour that's going to help to achieve that beautiful look. So here where you start working out and breaking down what's going to go where. So your roof colour is going to change, the external wall colour, we're going to introduce a fence colour and then a front door colour. So then we start to play with what's going to go where. Then the next thing, so we started off with a mood board that had quite a lot of imagery, certain colours, colours that we've now taken out, images that we've now removed. And we're kind of left with this. So we've kind of worked out that we're going to use a particular pool coping, particular decking colour. We've selected our house colour, so for the overall body of the house, and our roof, and then our fence colour. And then we've got some beautiful greens here that we're going to use for an external pool surround, and also for a front door colour. So you can see here on this, look, it's a beautiful colour palette. We've used Colorsmith to create a colour, and we've actually wanting to, because I guess when you're looking at the style of home you've got, for example, the colour palette that has been created here has been created for a house that's sort of where the inside blends seamlessly to the outside, so you're wanting to have it to connect. So we've used Colorsmith to create colours from the interior that then will work with the exterior, so you've got that cohesion. I love that. I think it looks fantastic. Yes, and we have removed the flamingos. We've also put bits of paper up there, you know, pinned to the board as well, so write down what's what, so that whoever's looking at it and who's putting things on, taking things off, understands what's happening with this colour journey. So that explains a mood board, and now we're just going to revisit. So we've talked about if you have clean slate, if you like. If you're starting and you're building or you're renovating, you're going to colour up most areas. But if you are working with something that has to stay within your design, sometimes that can be quite daunting, because it's, how am I going to work out what colours are going to work with that? How do I get this to be cohesive, etc. So we've got a really fantastic tool, and if you've watched it before, you'll understand I talk a lot about Colorsmith. Colorsmith is an amazing colour aid, if you like, and I've used the reader here to create this colour palette up there. So in this instance, we have some blue window frames that we have to build a colour palette with. So the windows are not going to be changed, so therefore it's working out what we can then put with that. Now, what I did was I scanned the blue window frame with the Colorsmith reader, and then I went straight into what's called combinations. So combinations gives you colours that are designed to work with the colour that you have created. So it takes away all of the angst and the fear of, oh my goodness, are these colours going to work together? How's it going to look? Because it works perfectly. So from creating a colour, then I've leveraged combinations, and I've selected 2 colours out of the combination palette. So combo 1 and combo 2. So where you can see a main body, so the overall colour of the exterior dwelling could be in the combo 1 colour, and then for all of our trims, etc., we could do it in the combo 2 colour. So you've got some beautiful colours that work extremely well together. And then to add a little bit of interest, I've also leveraged the combinations function and taken out some beautiful colours that we could introduce into this space for front door colours. So we've got a beautiful pink, a beautiful green, and then a beautiful sort of goldy mustard tone that works extremely well. So we've created a colour palette with ease. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to come back onto the screen, and I hope it all works. Yep, fantastic. Okay, and now I'm going to again share my screen, but this time I'm going to show you how I created the colour so that everybody watching has an idea of what you can do. So let me just see. So here I have what's called our Colorsmith reader. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to tap the top to wake it up so that the Bluetooth function is enabled. It's going to start flashing blue, and I'm going to connect it to my iPad. So I will share my iPad and pop myself into the corner. Okay, so here we have the way that Colorsmith works is you use the reader in conjunction with an app. So to download the app, there are 2 QR codes on the screen at the moment. One is for the Apple Store and the other is for Google Play. So I'll give you a moment if you want to download and follow me. That's fantastic. As I said, you download the app and then we go through the functions. From the app itself, I'll just keep talking while I'm giving you a moment. From the app itself, it is pre-populated with a colour library, so you can choose colours from that. It has all of our latest trending colour forecasts throughout. We've got chromatic joy. We've got some beautiful trends as well, which are also, I'll just show you here, available in our brochure. So they are in the app as well. So let me start by, you can see the app in the top. We'll just tap on that. And here we go. So the app has opened up. I'm now going to tap on Colorsmith, and then I'm going to, connect my device. It's just connected straight away. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take the lid off the reader, and I'm going to pop the reader onto my blue window frame, if you like. We're going to improvise here. Now I'm going to scan the colour, and it has brought up an excellent match, which is fantastic. So from this, I now hit select, and I am now able to save my colour, and I can pretty well name it whatever I choose. So I'm going to be very original. And then I'm going to hit save colour. So I've created a match to my blue window frame. And now from that, I can order a test pot. I can, where it says order in store, it populates a QR code. Now that QR code contains all of the information needed to create this colour into paint. So where it says share, I can share that across all of my social media channels or platforms. I can airdrop, text, email. It's a fantastic way of creating and sharing your color. But I'm going to go back. So now I'm going to hit explore colors. So as I showed you, we created a color. You've now got the opportunity, if you like, you can lessen the intensity of the color or you can heighten the intensity. So you can create for yourself a monochromatic color scheme with ease. And so if I wanted to, I could utilize any of those beautiful tones there to use for my color palette. But I also want to show you where it says combinations. Here are some beautiful colors that you can use in conjunction with the color that you have created. So there's a beautiful pink, a beautiful, well, the screen looks a little bit peach, but it's actually sort of an ochre tone, which is stunning. And then you're going across some of the beautiful greens, and then you've got some very soft grays here that you could use as well. So it's a really easy, foolproof way of creating a color scheme for yourself. As I said, it takes away all of the angst. It is fantastic. And again, you know, you can select a color, go through the motions, save the color, and everything will be saved in the camera reel here itself. Where the C is, you can just tap on that, go back to all of your colors. It's a fantastic way and it's a fantastic tool. So I might just come back onto the screen. Okay, I'm going to see whether we have any questions. It looks like it could be a rather quiet night. So I did have a question earlier on in our feed, in our boost post, and a query was, and this seems to be a very reoccurring question, how do I know what white to use? So I'm going to answer that now. So when using or selecting whites for exteriors, it's very important to understand how white is going to work within an external environment. So generally, and I like to refer to whites bleaching out. So what happens is when you put a white out in full sun, if you like, it tends to lose its intensity. So hence, when you're selecting a white for external purposes, I would always recommend selecting something that has a little bit more substance, if you like, or a little bit more tint to it, because then we know that when it is out in full sun, you're not going to have to wear your sunglasses outside. It's going to be eliminate the glare, if you like. So there's quite a few ways you can go about this, but the easiest way is when you are looking for a white, obviously you're going to take into consideration what we've talked about tonight, having a look at any other elements that are going to feature into your design, because then it's going to help determine whether you're going to have more of a cooler white, more of a neutral white, or more of a warm white. But one thing that's really important is understanding the LRV, which is the light reflectance value. And for that, I'm going to take you to my computer screen, my laptop. Oh, fantastic. I popped myself in the corner. Okay, so unsure of where to begin and you're looking for whites, and a white journey for exterior can be a little bit tricky. Start off at our Taubmans website, so www.taubmans.com.au. It's very easy to navigate, as you can see here, and all of our paint colors are all grouped by color family. So select on paint colors. You can scroll down here and you can see here that all of the colors, so you've got your whites and neutrals, grays and blacks, etc., etc. But if you continue on going down a little bit further to where it says watercolor swatches, and let's just tap on this. This is where I like to go to find out more information around color. So once you, okay, so we can have a look at our whites and neutrals here. There's some beautiful whites here, or you can search for a particular white if you do know the name of the white. So I'm going to bring up Surf Mist. Now if I tap on View Color Details here, it brings up the LRV, the light reflectance value. So for me, when I'm working with whites, and I reference this quite a lot, if you're unsure of how white's going to perform externally, one thing you can do is have a look here. And if you look for a white, for me personally, I look at whites that sit around about 65 to, let's just say, 75. And I know that when they're in an external application and, you know, in full sun, they're going to perform really well and have enough substance, if you like, or enough tint to prevent glare. The other thing I suggest, and I highly recommend this, and I can't stress this enough, is, and I'll come back onto the screen, is to sample pot your white. Now, the easiest way to do this is to get yourself a sample pot, get yourself a large piece of cardboard. We're looking at 1 metre by 1 metre square of cardboard you want. Now, most hardware stores, I'll reference Bunnings, when our paint comes into the stores on pallets, it has what they call pallet liners in between, so cardboard that sits between. And they're usually quite happy to help you out with some cardboard. So if you get yourself one of those and you're brushing out 1 metre by 1 metre square, I would do 3 coats. That way 1 coat's going to, if you like, almost aid as an undercoat. And then your 2 coats again of the top coat's going to ensure that you have adequate film build and coverage, and it's going to ensure that you really get to see how that colour is going to perform. Once dry, move it outside, popping it in different areas around the house, so on the external dwelling. So you're going to want to put it into full sun so that you can see how direct sun, etc., is going to affect the colour and how your colour is going to work within that environment. And also move the colour swatch around to areas where where it lacks light or lacks a lot of sunlight. And then you can see again how it's going to work within that external environment. It's really, really important, because one of the things when working with whites is whites are one of the most easiest influence colours. And, you know, depending on what your surrounds are, what also exists around the perimeters of the dwelling, etc., that can also influence your whites. So by trialling it, you're going to see how it's going to work. And then there's no surprises. That's the biggest and most important tip that I can give you. And, you know, it applies to internal as well. Certainly, I've had many conversations with many of our lovely customers out there in regards to how they've selected a white, they've used it internally, and they're disappointed because your lighting levels, flooring, and all those sorts of things can really influence, again, your colour. So best piece of advice, trialling it first. Okay, I'm just going to check and see whether we have any questions, because it appears to be rather quiet this evening. So if we don't, we might call it a night, and then I'll sit behind the camera and answer any further questions. So I'll just check. Oh, okay, yeah, we do. Okay. Thank you, Peter, for joining us this evening. So what's the best exterior paint you have? Okay, for me, I am going to recommend Taubmans All Weather. It's a fantastic product. And I might even see if I can very quickly, let me see if I can get it up on screen here for everybody. All right. Okay, so back to our Taubmans website, and here we can see from the product, the drop-down menu, I'm going to tap on exterior paints. And here we go. I'll just open this up a little bit. Here we go. Fantastic. So you've got Taubmans All Weather. What I really love about it is, you would have heard me, if you've watched before, talking endlessly about Taubmans Endure, our interior range, which has what's called NanoGuard technology. So it has basically a one-size paint particle. So if you popped it under a microscope, it has, how do I put this? It has one size paint particle, but then it has a smaller paint particle that fills the airspace and creates what they call an interlocking molecular structure. So the fantastic thing about that is, for internally, it means that you can scrub the paint and it's not going to burnish. So burnishing is when you end up with shiny patches, but for external purposes, it becomes what they call dirt shedding technology. So, you know, if you've got, one of the big things that we must remember when we paint an external surface, it's not only the UVs, etc., that can affect the painted finish, if you like, but it's also dirt, things like that. So I would ensure that you use something like all weather. It has, like dirt shedding technology. So dirt gets onto the surface. It's a good wash down with the hose or a good rainwater, and the dirt just comes off, which basically helps to protect your exterior paint. So all weather is the way to go. And if you're wanting to use an undercoat, something like 3-in-1, Taubmans 3-in-1 is a fantastic undercoat. You can use that for interior and exterior purposes. But do also know that Taubmans All Weather is self-priming. So I will, once we finish streaming, I'll pop the link to Taubmans All Weather into the feed for you so that you can read a little bit further about it. Okay, Grace, thank you very much for joining us. So how do I know what paint to use for different types of surfaces? Well, that's a very, very good question. So there are all types of paints available, and every paint is, fit for purpose. So you've got the best way, and I'll use the website here again, is, as you can see, I'm still on screen, yep. So products, you've got prep paints, you've got exterior paints, interior, doors and trims, and ceiling paints. So they're generally the categories that you're going to need. So you've got a prep paint, something like Taubmans 3-in-1, which is fantastic. It has exceptional filling properties. So if you are, I'll give you a couple of examples. So with the 3-in-1, if you've got brand new gyprock and you're doing a renovation, new gyprock contains lots of tiny little pinholes, if you like. So you need something that's going to be able to fill that, giving you a smooth surface, ensuring that when you do your top coat, you're going to get an even distribution of the paint. So, and 3-in-1 is also fantastic too if you are renovating and you have doors and trims that are previously painted. What I would recommend is seeing whether you have an oil-based or a water-based. If it is oil-based, you're going to need to use something like 3-in-1 to allow you to then use a water-based top coat. So for your doors and trims, do something that's called the metho test. So get yourself a rag, pop a little bit of methylated spirits onto it, and then wipe it onto the trims or onto the door. Now, if it shines up, it is oil-based. If some of the paint comes off onto your rag, it's water-based. So if it is oil-based, using 3-in-1 as your adhesion coat, it's going to, putting the 3-in-1 on and then using something like your Taubmans water-based enamel is going to give you a fantastic finish for something like your doors and trims. And then, so you've got your 3-in-1 for prep. You've got for, let me have a look here. For your exterior paint, as I talked before, all weather all the way, or you do also have sunproof. Then you've got interior. So for your interior broad wall, you've got something like your Taubmans Endure or your Easy Coat. And then I mentioned before, doors and trims, I'd send you the water-based enamel way. And then what else have I missed? And then you've also got ceiling paints. So you've got your Taubmans Easy Coat Ceiling or your Taubmans Ceiling White. So I'll come back onto the camera. So there is a particular product that is available for depending on what area you're painting or what project you're embarking on. So as I've just pointed out, and for a ceiling paint, you've got a ceiling white that is very flat, and you want that because you're wanting to have a surface. If you've got, you're wanting it to be flat. If you've got any imperfections in the ceiling, you're not wanting them to come to life. And it also too, having that flat finish on your ceiling prevents or stops the glancing light. So that's really important. Then for your walls, you're wanting something like, as I pointed out, your Easy Coat or your Endure, doing something like a low sheen. So, and then using that in a low sheen or even in a matte finish, if you like, for your Endure. But you're wanting to be able to, with your walls, you're wanting to be able to wipe them or scrub them down. So that's why you're using a particular product for your walls. And then, as I mentioned before, your doors and trims, using a water-based enamel, very hard wearing, designed to withstand knocks, etc., that you would ordinarily find. If you're using the vacuum cleaner and you're knocking the trims, hands on the doors, etc. So that's why there are particular products for particular areas or projects that you're embarking on. Okay, I hope that helps. If not, Grace, please pop something else into the feed and I'll be very happy to answer some further questions for you. What else do we have? Okay. Okay, Michelle, thank you very much for joining us. Sorry, I've got quite a few questions there, so I'll just answer this and then I'm going to have to hop off the screen and go behind the camera. Okay, so would you use 3-in-1 for doors and trims that are not previously painted? Yes, I would. So even if you are buying, you know, a new door, if you like, off the shelf, and you're buying new skirting boards, trims, moldings, etc. as well off the shelf, and perhaps they either one have, the door might have a they sometimes come primed with sort of a, let's say, a light turquoise color, or the moldings come primed sometimes in pink or even white. Generally, I would say that the primer that's on them is for transportation purposes, and I would always recommend priming first with 3-in-1 and then doing your top coat. It's certainly going to ensure adequate adhesion, which I think is extremely important. Do it once, do it right is what I always say, and preparation is the key to a perfect result. So I will answer the rest of your questions when we stop streaming. So thank you very much, everybody, for joining us this evening. Thank you for all of the questions. It's fantastic. I do hope that you have enjoyed tonight's session, and I will pop some information into the feed as promised. Hope you have a fantastic week, and I look forward to seeing you all again next week. Until then, everybody, happy painting. Bye.